Hi everybody, this is Agnes from Sediment, and today we are going to talk about some of the wine beliefs that I am simply tired of hearing. I have just come back from my week-long study trip to Samos. I visited my friend and study partner Evmorfia Kostaki, who is a hands-on winemaker in a hands-off winery. One evening, when we were sitting and enjoying wine and talking all things wine, her partner in life and wine asked me what really drives me crazy in the wine industry. What beliefs and discussions do I hear so often that I am simply tired of hearing them? He mentioned few things and I started thinking as well. The problem with many of these ideas is that they are so deeply embedded in our thoughts and minds that we no longer look at them with a fresh perspective. And some of them are still being actively debated, even though by now there really should not be much debate left. So today, let's look at 5 wine beliefs that, in my opinion, are either misunderstood, oversimplified, or no longer worth repeating. Absolutely not true. As my good friend in one of my long-form videos said, wine is alive. And just like us human beings, when wine is suffering, struggling, starving, or deprived of water, it cannot do a very good job. I think this idea might have come from the understanding that wines are not particularly well suited to fertile soils. If they are grown on nutrient-rich soils, they tend to grow vigorously, produce a lot of foliage, tendrils, and leaves, and not particularly high-quality fruit. At least not fruit suited for high-quality winemaking. Balanced wine is what makes the best wine because just as with us, when we eat too much, we end up on the other extreme, not being able to function properly. I also find this narrative odd, especially because what viticulturists actually do in the vineyard is constantly look for ways to make the wine's life better. If they believe cover crops are competing for water or nutrients, they remove them. They irrigate their vineyards, they add fertilizers to ensure the wines are healthy and thriving. Of course, we can discuss broader implications of many of these choices and whether actually they are always necessary. In fact, please let me know in the comments if you would like me to make a video specifically about viticulture and its impact on wine and its style. Sulfites. This was one of the topics that Kostaki Winery team told me they are tired hearing of. And bear in mind, they are not people who use sulfites generously. If anything, they bottle their wines with SO2 levels far below of what is actually allowed for organic wine. When we bottled wines together, they did not add anything at all. There are great wines made with no sulfites, there are great wines made with some sulfites, and there are great wines made with quite a lot. For example, those epic sweet wines with the greatest flavor complexity, they will always contain more sulfites than dry white or dry red wine. And it always frustrates me that people are so quick to condemn added sulfites in wine while caring very little about the bag of chips they consume, the charcuterie board they order with wine, or the dried fruits and nuts they snack on. With all of those foods, we often consume way more sulfites than we do with wine, might I add. Yes, sulfites are an allergen, and it is essential for wine bottles to contain a warning label for people who suffer from allergies. But if we do not get a headache from eating a pastrami sandwich, we most likely are not allergic to sulfites. I am actually happy to have sulfites in my wine. It is remarkable what small dose of sulfites can do. They help keep wine fresher for longer by binding with oxidized elements in the wine. More importantly, they have very effective antimicrobial properties and not only inhibit bacterial growth, but doing so also limit the production of various biogenic amines. And those, by the way, are the compounds that actually are proven to cause headache. Anyway, I digress. Sulfites are good in wine, they are necessary, and their appropriate use helps ensure that wine remains in good condition and generally does not harm us. In fact, their presence in wine prevents the formation of other, more harmful elements. Too often we immediately assume that difficult vintages, Challenging vintages, vintages with less than ideal weather conditions, must produce bad wines. When in reality, I think that in the hands of dedicated viticulturists and a skilled winemaking team, what varies more from vintage to vintage is style and volume rather than quality. Yes, aging potential too, I must add. Take, for example, 2017 vintage Dom Perignon. It comes from a very challenging vintage. In fact, because of poor quality of Pinot Noir, it is one of the rare Dom Perignon vintages in which Chardonnay significantly dominates. Poor vintages almost always mean more work in the vineyard. What Aurélien Laert of Laert Frères said about the 2024 vintage really resonates with me.
We saved the grapes, we tried to save the grapes, but we didn't save the people.
Poor vintages almost always mean thinking outside the box, adapting to situations not normal, not standard, making difficult decisions and acting quickly. Poor vintages almost always mean sacrifices, and that is what separates a good winemaker from a great one. So, for example, a cool and rainy vintage might lead to a more acidity-driven wine style with leaner body and less ripe fruit profile rather than a more classic vintage character. This is a stylistic difference and often a matter of personal preference. Of course, rain and humidity can also lead to increased disease pressure. Cool, cloudy weather may delay ripening. But these issues can often be tackled with yield reduction, which of course is not always an easy decision. So I trust a great producer when choosing a wine from a challenging vintage. I might be less trusting of a producer who seems to make great wines only when Mother Nature does the job for them. And there are some, it is often quite easy to spot them when you look at the critic scores across different vintages. I encounter this belief regularly. The moment I review or taste a wine from a larger estate or a better-known brand, especially if the wine is of great quality and I rate it highly, I receive at least a few comments saying that these high production companies cannot make good wine. Because have I seen the number of bottles they produce? The truth is that small winery making 10 to 20,000 bottles per year can make bad wine just as easily as large producer can. It is passion, love for what you do, and dedication that lead to a high-quality product. And people like that can be found both in small and large wineries. Yes, perhaps you are more likely to find them in their own projects, working under their own name, tending their own vineyards, than when they are working for someone else under someone else's supervision and goals. However, large estates might have the financial means to invest in the best technology, hire the best consultants, and build a strong team of professionals to make a very good wine. That is something that can be much more difficult for a smaller producer. We also should not forget that these large estates often provide important training ground for younger generations. The fact that money comes from a large investor or in many cases a well-established family, think of Antinori or Gigal, does not mean that people working there do not care. If anything, producing top quality wine adored and enjoyed by millions worldwide at those volumes is that much harder. I would also argue that statistically, a large producer is less likely to produce a really bad wine, or at least faulty wine. They have millions of bottles to sell, so the very minimum is that the wine will be acceptable, albeit sometimes uneventful. But it will be good and reliable. So my advice is to always be honest with yourself and others. If you feel that you want to support smaller producers and family-owned wineries, then please do. Choose their wines, explore them, taste them, and tag them in social media to help increase their reach and visibility. You can say openly that this is what you believe in and why you choose them. But it does not mean that wine produced in much greater volume is automatically bad. I was never even aware of this misconception until the moment when I started to film videos where I tasted sparkling wines on camera. All of a sudden, a significant number of comments started pouring in, saying that I should never swirl sparkling wine or champagne. That was really new to me. One of the reasons I use a glass shape for champagne and other sparkling wines that is closer to a white wine glass is because I believe that great sparkling wine is, first and foremost, a great wine. And it starts with high-quality base wine. Therefore, serving it in a white wine glass allows me to appreciate the wine for its vinous character. There is logic in the idea that CO2 carries aromatic compounds to the surface for us to enjoy. But by swirling, we can reveal the fuller aromas of a sparkling wine. And yes, we do risk reducing some of that CO2 presence by doing so. However, a good sparkling wine will not be destroyed by few swirls. At least I have never experienced a great sparkling wine going flat only because I swirled it. But I sure think I have had wonderful experiences enjoying them from a white wine glass. Let me know in the comment section below what drives you crazy in the wine industry. And make sure to watch this video next.